I gotta tell you, that theme is really growing on me.
Really?
Yeah, I think it's gonna be big.
Well, I'll have to make it longer, I think. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Well, I think it's it's unique. People are gonna be listening to us, and it's very good. Anyway.
Thank you.
I'm dreaming about it now.
I think the Austin Powers theme has some competition now.
I think so. I think there's no way.
It'll draw them in. Well, hello and welcome to episode 5 of Adult Music, your podcast for music for the mature mind. I'm your co-host Russ, along with Mike here.
Here I am.
The Grammy Awards have been announced.
Yes, we're sorry to be a day late with this podcast, but we wanted to get all the Grammy results, and we got them, and we were going to record the podcast right after the Grammys, but we were so annoyed and frustrated that we that we had to take a rest and collect our senses before we came back. That's not true. I'm just kidding.
You're just kidding.
Okay. Yeah, it was okay. It was it was predictable, really, what happened in the winners of the Grammys, but there were a few nice surprises in it. Anyway, let's take a look at who won.
Yeah, let's go through and review these results.
Yeah, okay, so it's starting with the Jazz Grammy, since we did that episode first about 2 weeks ago. Best Improvised Jazz Solo, Chick Corea, All Blues. Thumbs up from me.
Yeah. As we said a couple weeks ago, this album is just full of good solos. You could pick anyone, really. And this is an excellent work of this tune. Great solo.
Yeah, we actually picked this one because we thought Chick would get it. Okay, onwards to Best Jazz Vocal Album. We kind of wanted Kenny Washington here, but the winner was Kurt Elling. Now, the thing is, Kurt Elling, he's another guy who always wins. You know, he's sort of a Grammy committee favorite. His last album won too, and this one we weren't too happy about.
This is pretty lame, if you ask me. I'd only put this on if I wanted to make myself in a worse mood on a bad day.
Yeah, I do like him though. I like his voice, but yeah, I don't know. This didn't really do it for me either. I was kind of
as I said, I've been kind of pleased with some of his earlier recordings when he was doing a unique interpretation of a standard or a good arrangement that was made for him.
Standards,
but
or
here,
even songs that aren't standard. Like in the last album, he did Bob Dylan's song "Hard Rain's Gonna Fall." I thought that was really intriguing.
Yeah, if he has the right arrangement, there's not. I mean, his voice is excellent in the right context, but the material here is just dreary. So let's hope we see Kenny come back and get some more recognition.
All right.
I recommend, if you listen to Secrets Are the Best Stories, after that, just get a little bit of a ear cleanse with What's the Hurry by Kenny Washington. Then you'll be in a good mood again. Okay,
Best Jazz Instrumental Album went to Trilogy 2, Chick Corea, Christian McBride, and Brian Blade. That was our pick to win this group, and it did, and we're very happy.
Yeah, great.
I am.
Yeah, 1 and 2 are both good. The interplay here and the solos are good.
This is a good album to listen to if you're actually a jazz musician. You want to hear good interplay between musicians. It's really incredible. The three of them communicate exceptionally well.
Yeah, very clear recording too. You feel like you're right next to the stage on this one.
Okay, Best Large Jazz Ensemble Album went to Data Lords by Maria Schneider Orchestra. Now, she's another Academy favorite. Her last album also won in this category about 5 years ago, and I really loved this record, so I was very happy about it.
I like this recording because I think it's interesting. However, this is not a big band in a real traditional sense. It's a large modern ensemble. So the only reservations I have about this one is that, I really enjoyed the Monkestra recording so far, although I didn't feel that this recording was any better or more interesting than the previous ones. But I would have liked to have seen one of the traditional kind of big band albums, this one or the Orrin Evans and the Captain Black Big Band, get some recognition too. I liked all these recordings, so
yeah.
I don't feel too either way about this one. Yeah.
I want to say about the John Beasley. He had done 2 previous Orchestre records, and I thought they were both better than this one, although this one was really good too. But I thought the first 2 where he does all Monk tunes were fantastic. So I would dig those up if I were the listeners. Also, if you want to hear Data Lords, you have to buy it from Maria Schneider's website. It's just not available anywhere. Yeah, and it was pretty expensive. So there you go.
Yeah, thanks for letting me listen to your copy.
You're welcome. Anybody else who's my friend and wants to listen to my copy of Maria Schneider, just give me a ring, okay? All right, next, Best Latin Jazz Album. Oh, boy, this was really disappointing, I thought.
This is like the worst one of the list,
of the 5,
I thought.
Yeah, of the 5. This one would have finished 5th if I had to rank them. 4 questions. Arturo Farrell and the Afro-Latin Jazz Orchestra. Yeah, I thought all the other 4 were just really...
I had more than 4 questions about why this one won, but I do have an answer, though, that I'm not going to listen to any more albums with recitations after doing this Grammy list. I'm just tired of it.
You know, the Beats used to do that in the 50s. They would recite their poetry over jazz, and I guess it's got a flavor of the period to it. It's kind of cool to listen to, but it's just not that interesting. I kind of prefer, I prefer just to hear instrumental music or singing. So exactly. I really like recitation over jazz, really.
Yeah. Okay. And this was a letdown.
Yeah, letdown. In Latin jazz is usually my favorite group too, and it kind of was this year too. The other 4 recordings were really
they're all worth hearing, but not. Yeah,
they're all worth
not
hearing.
The 4 questions.
Yeah, but the one that won, I don't know. Well, listen to it and decide for yourself.
Decide for yourself.
Okay, best. Now this is outside of the jazz category. Now this is best contemporary instrumental album. We were going for. Americana, Gregoire Marais, Romain Callan, and Bill Frisell. But the winner was, as always, Snarky Puppy. They're another, Grammy favorite. They always win when they have a record nominated. And this was okay. I mean, it was good. I like Snarky Puppy actually a lot, but this particular live recording, I don't feel like it really caught them.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan. The musicianship is excellent, and the recording here is great. The 2 I enjoyed musically most was the Americana, which is very relaxing and subtle and makes really good use of Bill Frisell. And the harmonica is lovely there. And then I thought the atmosphere of the Jean Baptiste was really fun. Yeah. So if you're looking for something upbeat that's got a lot of crowd enjoyment too, because it's a live performance, that was a fun album.
Yeah, I want to mention Jean Baptiste was also nominated in the New Age category. Interestingly enough.
Has he been doing Yanni transcriptions or something?
I haven't heard this record, actually. I should probably listen to it and see what it's like. But it's with another... I should look it up so I know what I'm talking about. It was with another musician. It was like a duo. And
John Tesh.
No, it wasn't John Tesh. It was. I can tell you in a minute. Here we go. Once I open up all these windows here. It was with Corey Wong. Corey Wong and Jean Baptiste. The album was called Meditation, so I guess it's just this chilled out...
It's a very new agey title.
Yeah, and it's also... Yeah, I didn't hear it, though. I should give it a listen, but I do like Jean Baptiste. The Live at the Village Vanguard record was really nice.
There's a lot of good piano playing in a variety of styles there.
Yeah, before we move on, I'd like to mention, in Best New Age Album... The winner was Jim Kimo West with his album More Guitar Stories. Now, Jim Kimo West is a slack key guitarist, and he does these kind of chill sort of. He's got a small ensemble around him, and he does these kind of little chill kind of works. I don't know, they're kind of unclassifiable. This could have really been in contemporary instrumental if it really wanted to be, but they put it in New Age. And it's an album worth hearing. I would recommend it to anybody who needs to unwind, let's say, after a hard day. It was really nice.
Slacken their keys.
Yeah, if you want to slacken your keys, this could be a good way to do it. More Guitar Stories. Jim Kimo West, winner of the Best New Age Album. Okay. And I guess that takes us... one more point that I wanted to make. Gregory Porter... His album All Rise was nominated in the R&B category this year rather than the jazz vocal where he belongs. And I think given that Kurt Elling won it, well, they might have picked him anyway. But I think Gregory Porter would have had an excellent chance of winning the Grammy in that category. But they put him in the R&B category to give him more exposure because most people, more people listen to R&B than listen to jazz. That won't be the case if we have anything to do about it in the next few years. We'll see if we can get people listening to, more, let's say, complicated or more, I don't want to say complicated. That sounds awful. So off-putting. More, music with more activity happening, let's say, or more depth to it. Not that R&B doesn't have depth, please. I don't want any hate mail. Okay. Anyway, Gregory Porter did not win the R&B award. That went to John Legend, for his album, which was kind of sad. I would have liked to have seen Gregory walk away with that. He's got a great voice. I recommend All Rise, Gregory Porter. Give it a listen.
Yeah, that's a good one. I enjoyed the previous recordings, especially, what was it, Back to the Alley?
Back to the Alley, and the other one before that was Liquid Spirit. They were both fantastic.
Back to the Alley is my favorite one so far because of the sparseness of the arrangements.
Right.
But I do feel that his new album, his voice actually sounds stronger and more confident.
Yeah.
The arrangements mostly work for me, but there's a lot of production on there, which is one of the reasons I think it was gone into the R&B category. There's more horn arrangements and, other backing tracks and things in there. And I did enjoy it, especially I thought his voice is really powerful, more so than the previous album.
Yeah, we had talked about this before, and we said that his talent lies in his timbre, because he's got a really beautiful sound.
Yeah, his timbre, and in his original songs, his interesting intervals, they're very different. The jumps in his melodies are unique compared to what we usually hear. And the combination of that, and he sings with a real honesty. Yeah, that makes his recordings unique. So
that's true, and also I think he's come quite a long way as a singer since the "Take Me to the Alley" album. I think he's actually a much better vocalist all around on this album. As far as
he sounds so much more confident in the way he hits the notes, and he really puts the volume out, and it works with the larger ensemble. He'll be around. It's a shame he lost to John Legend, but he'll be back for more.
Yeah, John Legend is more on the pop side of things. He's an R&B singer, but he's kind of more on the he gets radio play or whatever passes for that these days. By the way, Gregory Porter, he also did a record of Nat King Cole covers, which I think it was kind of ill-advised. Because when you hear the songs, you think, oh, Nat King Cole was so much better. But I think that might have kind of done something with him, and because he sounds really good on this album a lot.
Could be. Okay. Yeah. I mean, his voice is not the same as Nat King Cole's voice. Yeah. So what suits his strengths is something different. But if it's one of his idols and something he enjoys, then so be it.
Okay, on to the classical Grammys. We have Best Orchestral Performance went to Charles Ives, Complete Symphonies, Los Angeles Philharmonic, Gustavo Dudamel, conductor. We wanted Copland in this category, but I'm happy with this. This was a really, I think this was a good choice. It's got 4 symphonies on it to the Copland only the 1, but I can handle it. I think more people need to listen to Ives' music, so if that makes them do it, that's a good thing.
Yeah, great performance here. I just biased towards the Copland. Because,
we both like that a lot.
Yeah, and Ives, although you understand how his growth as a composer went when you listen to these symphonies in order, I don't like all of them as much as I enjoy just listening to the Copland. So that's based more on my preference for the material than the actual performance. So these are very excellent performances.
Yeah, Ives will very much push your ear, much in the same way as democracy will push your patience. But I think that's kind of the point.
Right.
Yeah, he really loved. He was like a great believer in the American experiment, and he kind of told it as he saw it in his symphonies, and I really think we could all benefit from listening to them and doing the work to really hear them. Okay, what's happening in them? This is a lot, and it's not always easy to listen to.
Well, yeah, right, and as we said, before we just move on, it's American heavy in the choices here.
Yes,
but I feel that. Now, how many Americans do you think know Ives or even Copeland, the average person? So
we're not a classical music listening nation.
So if we get some exposure for these noted composers and performers, then I'm not against it. At least the Americans can do is recognize their own composers in these areas. So
right, and really all around the world, I think people should hear this music. I mean, it represents us, and it's our kind of like little contribution to this big classical thing, the firmament. Okay, there, but as a nation, if let's say it's not me. You had nothing to do with it.
Yes. Speaking of Americans, the next category.
Yeah, okay. Gershwin, Porgy and Bess by the Metropolitan Opera Chorus and Orchestra conducted by David Robertson. Soloists Frederick Ballantyne, Angel Blue, Denise Graves, Latonia Moore, Eric Owens. And I hadn't heard this one, if you remember, because it wasn't available on streaming. And it's only available on CD, I guess.
Their own label, I think. I believe there's some clips of live performances that you can see online, but the recording itself is on the Metropolitan label, so you've got to buy it if you want to hear it.
And I think I'm going to now. I mean, it's kind of, I'd like to hear it. I love the opera. I'm very familiar with the Simon Rattle recording with, Willard White was on that one as Porgy. I'm just off the top of my head. Okay, but this is a newer one. It'd be nice to hear if it's that good. I'd like to hear it. I had picked Handel Agrippina because of the performance of Joyce Di Donato, who is fantastic on this record. Also worth hearing if you want to hear a Baroque opera. But we went for Gershwin. Great tunes. You're just gonna. This is just some of the best American music writing ever. Okay, Gershwin, Porgy and Bess. Some really unforgettable tunes. A lot of them became jazz standards and are part of the Great American Songbook now. Indeed. All right, best choral performance. I called this the weakest group.
I know that you're a big fan of this one.
Yeah, and Danielpour. It's Richard Danielpour, right? The Passion of Yeshua. This is the Jesus Passion. Okay, so about his crucifixion, sort of like in the spirit of the Johann Sebastian Bach, St. Matthew Passion, St. John Passion. Only this one kind of had more of a Middle Eastern. Yeah, it's odd. It has more of it kind of goes into more of Middle Eastern perspectives, in the text, but not in the music. That's what's weird to me. It's the setting is just pretty ordinary, actually, I thought. But this is the winner. It's really very well executed. I can't really kind of say anything about it. I kind of thought that maybe Kostalski Requiem should have won this one, but Danielpour is the winner. There you go. Next, Best Chamber Music Small Ensemble Performance went to Contemporary Voices by the Pacifica Quartet. And you have to talk about this one because, do you remember?
Yeah, as I said last time, I remember listening to this. These three Pulitzer Prize winning pieces, the Shulamit String Quartet, I found it. Well, after reading the theme of Felix Nussbaum, it was expectedly dark. I did like the Jennifer Higdon's voice somewhat, especially the third movement. And then there's the Ellen Taft-Zwillik Quintet with alto saxophone and string quartet, which is kind of unusual, and it was a bit playful, so I enjoyed that piece. But of these nominees, I believe I preferred the Dover Quartet, the Schumann Quartet's best.
We went traditional here.
Yeah, it's traditional, although some people think that maybe the Schumann compositions aren't always performed to the same standard just because of the way he probably emulated his mentors in composition. But these performances are great here, but there's nothing new or innovative about the program there. So I guess I can see why they went with the collection of these Pulitzer Prize winning pieces.
Yeah, but, again, all American composers too.
That said, I mean, the other choices, the Brooklyn Rider one was sort of taking a chance on breaking up the Beethoven with these contemporary compositions. Is sort of maybe too adventurous in programming for most people. And then there was the Hahn one that we discussed that is not really classical music. And the other one also, the Heinz Fields. This is sort of, to me, kind of new agey. So I feel like the two real choices in what I would consider chamber music were between the Pacifica and the Dover Quartet. So,
okay. Next one, Best Classical Instrumental Solo, and we were delighted to learn, and quite surprised too, delightfully surprised to learn that the soloist Richard O'Neill won this for his performance of Christopher Theophanidis' piece Concerto for Viola and Chamber Orchestra. Neither of us had heard of this composer before, let alone this work, and it came as this big surprise. We loved it. We said we hope this one wins, but we thought maybe Thomas Addis' this piece would win with Kirill Gerstein playing it. But no, that didn't happen. The one we liked the most won. I'm happy about this. I want to recommend this composer to everybody. This was really great.
His music is very accessible for modern music. There's lots of elements that you can identify right away and follow themes. Great use of timbre and other sort of things to pull you in. And both of these, the viola one, but the violin concerto is also awesome. And Albany Symphony, great. Interesting great. Recording. I'm going to listen to this some more. It's going to take a few lessons to get everything out of it. So
yeah, there's also a great concerto for violin on it as well. That's the work it's paired with. The whole album is really great. Okay. Best Classical Solo Vocal Album went to award. This is kind of interesting. It went to Ethel Smythe, British composer from the early 20th century. A symphony called The Prison, and it's a vocal symphony. It almost kind of it kind of unfolds like a theater piece, really. I liked the idea, the story, the text, but I thought that the writing wasn't terribly interesting to me. But it's a beautiful recording. First of all, it's on Chandos Records and it's an SACD. It's a very clean sounding recording. Performances are all good. I just found the music not terribly interesting, but it's new. It's not new. It's from the early 20th century, but it's music that you just don't hear very often. And this might be the only recording we get of it for quite a while. So I guess it's a good addition to the catalog. Certainly, I would have chosen Cecilia Bartoli for Farinelli in this, but she's very decorated as far as awards go already. Okay, next one, Best Classical Compendium went to Michael Tilson Thomas for From the Diary of Anne Frank and Meditations on Rilke. All right. Now, you kind of had a lot to say about this last week. We liked a few of these. We liked the Addis, Conducts Addis, and we liked the Cerebrier. And I liked Sadiaho, Kaya Sadiaho's album. But Michael Tilson Thomas winds up going home with it. I didn't really think much of this one either. So
no, and again... More recitations.
Recitations. Yes. Yeah. I'm not too... There's certain... Yeah. I'm trying to think of classical works with recitations that I like. Yeah, I kind of... There aren't many. There's a Debussy piece called Bilitis. There's the Trois Chansons de Bilitis, but then there's another work of incidental music, and somebody narrates in between the music, and I kind of like that. That was okay.
Yeah, for me, a little
exotic.
The Addis, Sarajevo, Cerebrier, I enjoyed all of those more than this one. What can you say? They must have had some reason they chose it, but I don't know what it is.
Michael Tilson Thomas, he's been around forever.
Yeah.
He's a great champion of American music as well. He's been involved in it really from the beginning. All right, last, Best Contemporary Classical Composition. And we were both, this is the other one that really thrilled us. So we were delighted to see that Christopher Rous's Symphony No. 5, which is based on Beethoven's Symphony No. 5.
I guess if you die, you win.
Yeah.
Basically, in jazz or classical. Not that it's undeserved. This piece is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I've listened to a lot of Rouse music that you've turned me on to. And,
I like Christopher Rouse is one of my favorite American composers, certainly, and among my favorite composers.
I think we mentioned this before, but since this is his fifth symphony, he sort of tributes Beethoven's fifth by working elements of that in. So even if you're not a fan of really modern classical music, you can approach this by listening for little motifs and figures that he sort of uses from Beethoven's fifth at different junctures in this composition, which is kind of fun to look for those. And he does all of his works, there's a really lot of nice brass and percussion, and the real bombastic timpani part in there is a lot of fun. So
he has
I
a lot
like
of
this
bombastic timpani in his music. Incidentally, Rouse did compose a sixth symphony completed in 2019, the year of his death. So I guess we'll eventually get a recording of that as well.
Has anyone recorded it yet?
No.
Wow.
I guess it's too new. They take too much time. But there is a lot of Rouse that remains unrecorded, including a gigantic Requiem. I would love to hear that. That's never been recorded either. That was composed in 2001, 2002. It's getting, the years are passing. Let's hear it. Come on.
Get it out there. Come on.
People, get a recording out there. All right. It's part of the, I heard somebody told me that getting a contemporary work recorded was one of the reasons you hear all these old pieces like by Mozart and Beethoven all the time is, well, first of all, people want to hear it, and second of all, you don't have to pay any like royalties to record them because they're all out there free,
right,
for anybody who wants to record them. But with a modern piece, you got to get the publisher to kind of agree, and then all these fees have to be paid, and it's apparently a lot of work. And I guess it takes an army of people to get it accomplished, which is really sad. I mean, there is a lot of good classical music being written that we're just not going to hear on recordings because of the difficulties involved in setting it all up to be recorded. Never mind a live performance. All right, and there we are, the Grammys. We can put this away for a year.
Yeah, let's put that away for a year or two.
Go back to,
depending on the nominees.
Yeah. So, by the way, if anyone is interested, the record of the year went to Taylor Swift. Surprise, surprise. I think only 3 people are capable of winning record of the year: Taylor Swift, Beyonce, or I don't know, some rapper or something. I don't know. It seems to be the two of them.
Anyway, let's cleanse the musical palate and get on to things that we are really interested in listening to.
Yeah.
And hopefully our listeners are too. By the way, if you're a listener to our podcast, and in the past few weeks, we've had a lot of listeners around the world in places where we don't know anyone.
Yeah,
and
pretty exciting.
So they must be new to us and our podcast. So the thing we haven't received are any comments or feedback really yet. So if you're out there, we've had listeners in Colombia, Israel, Morocco. Please write a comment. Let us know who you are and what you listen to so we can get to know who our audience is. And let us know on what platform you listen on. It's very interesting to us.
Yeah, also, if you want us to talk about something that you like or that you want to know more about, let us know. We'll be glad to at least look into it. Okay, and it's really thrilling to see like people from all over the world kind of pop up on the.
I just hope they're not looking for other types of adult content. They wouldn't be tempted based on our logo or name, would they?
Yeah.
I'm sure they're more sophisticated than that.
That was the intention, to draw people in that way. We're terrible. Yeah, I admit it.
Anyway, this week
guilty as charged.
We've got a collection of 3 classical and 3 jazz albums that we're
back to our normal format.
And I like all of these. And we're going to go in time order to start, and we'll just do the classical first and the jazz after that. So what's our first classical pick this week, Mike?
Okay, so we're always going to start with Baroque era if we choose a Baroque recording for the week.
Because if it ain't Baroque, don't fix it.
Yeah, you don't want to. You don't want to. I had a good line about that, and I can't remember. I should have written it down.
You can handle it later, right?
Yeah. Make sure you don't Baroque it or something. Yes. I don't remember what it was. Anyway, because anyway, the recording is not necessarily in the Baroque style, but it's by the pianist Piotr Anderszewski, the Polish pianist, and a very unusual one at that. He generally puts out these really adventurous programs, and this one is pretty interesting. It's Johann Sebastian Bach, Well-Tempered Clavier, Book 2, but this is not a traversal of the 24 preludes and fugues in that book. Rather, he's taken 12 of them. They're all from Book 2, nothing from Book 1, and he sort of programmed them in an order that he felt said something, that presented a whole program, as opposed to
he changes the order for the mood that he thinks they create,
right?
Which is interesting.
Yeah, it is, because usually this comes across, it's in all the chromatic keys. You hear the 24 chromatic keys normally when you play this, and it's more of a pedantic work, but nevertheless, it's still interesting. But he's tried to make them into character pieces here through his ordering of them and his performance. Okay, he kind of wants there to be sort of a musical narrative. And I have to say, I like his playing a lot. He's taken a few interesting tempos here, some very fast, some very slow. Kind of put me in the mind of Glenn Gould, who sort of did the same thing, except that he didn't arrange them like this. And I don't know I don't know that I have all that much to say about this, except that it was enjoyable. I liked it a lot. I like his playing. It's a bit unusual, a little off the beaten track. If you know these works, it's a good way to rediscover them.
Yeah, I've listened to them before in sort of, just the usual sequence.
Yeah.
And you sort of tune out after a little while, just because
in fact, I usually have to stop
exercises,
and then go back another day. I can't really listen to all of them.
But this program he's selected and the way he brings out the contrasts in them, all within a very subtle performance. The dynamics are very restrained here. So, you can not expect a lot of, fortes and different dynamics here. So you can sort of set the level, and then the program is a selection, and you can sort of navigate with him through them. And for me, it was a different experience than listening to other recordings of them. So I quite enjoyed, if you read about it, you'll see why they think, this is maybe a bit daring, especially to do something with Bach. But if you just approach it as a new listening experience, then it's actually quite enjoyable to follow his sort of navigation through them. So I like this recording a lot.
Yeah, me too. People generally want to lay down their interpretation of these works, like say, or something like that. But he's going for something a little more meta here, just his own sort of idea about it. He says that he arranged them. Some of them fit according to key, but then he wanted contrast between them too. And in some cases, he provides that. A lot of the ones that really stood out for me were the ones he played very slowly, like more slowly than you usually hear, because all of the relationships between the counterpoint really registers. You get a lot of time to just kind of absorb it and hear it. And he's still very skilled at keeping the melodic line going, even at these slower speeds. I always kind of feel like if you're playing, say, a melodic line, especially in say a fugue or a counterpoint, if you play it too slowly, it kind of gets like being on a bicycle, where if it's not moving fast enough, it'll just tip over. But you never really feel like you're in danger of that sort of thing here. And then there are some that are taking quite a clip, I think, for the contrast. Now, the thing about this album is what he's done is kind of, I hate to use the word intellectual because I don't want to turn people off, but there's a lot to think about and hear on this. And having only a week to listen to it really isn't enough. I really feel like this is an album that needs to be lived with for a bit to draw more out of it. I don't feel like I've really heard the all it has to offer yet, and I'm really looking forward to hearing this for the rest of the year. I have the feeling we're going to be talking about this again at the end of the year when the year-end lists come out. All right, so there you go. That's what we have to say about Piotr Anderszewski's album. Recommended. Well, everything we're going to talk about from now on is going to be recommended, I guess. Well, not necessarily.
No recitations from here on out.
No recitations from here. I don't think there will be recitations unless it's some stray piece that worked its way onto an album that I want to recommend or something like that. Okay. The next album I've got is works for violin and piano composed by Alfred Schnittke, the Russian composer from the 20th century, post-war 20th century. Daniel Hope is the violinist, and the pianist is Alexey Botvinov. Okay, and he is Russian. Okay, now Schnittke, I really wanted to talk about this because Schnittke holds like kind of an interesting place in my whole musical experience. When I was in college in the 80s, I was in Boston at Boston University, and in the late 80s there was a U.S.-Soviet exchange of composers, and we got to hear. And I was working at classical radio at the time, WBUR in Boston, and we had recorded. I was working as an engineer, so I got to record and master in the studio these recordings of these concerts, and so I got to hear all these contemporary Russian composers. Now, this was towards the end of the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union was still in existence. For me, learning about music, I didn't go to school for it at the time. I was really, at that time, just discovering classical music and jazz as well. College wound up being like a really musically liberating time for me. And hearing these works, when Schnittke's music came up, I took to it immediately. Two of the pieces I remember, now, I don't know that I heard them at these concerts or that I later heard them on other recordings and just conflated them or whatever, appear on this album. One of them is the Suite in the Old Style, which is it's practically a Baroque composition. I guess it's got some modern harmony in it, but it certainly comes across as a suite of Baroque dances. And it really is in that style. So I took to that right away. I was like, oh, a contemporary composer. Schnittke was contemporary at the time. He died in, I believe, 1996. I can check that. Hold on. No, I can't see it. Okay. Yeah, maybe around 1996, 1998. Okay. And the other work that featured there that really kind of lit my fire was Sonata for Violin and Piano No. 1, which is also on this album by Daniel Hope. That work, what really struck me was, at the time, I was trying to figure out contemporary music, and contemporary music from Darmstadt was really hard. It was all dodecaphonic, 12-tone. These were the days of Stockhausen and Pierre Boulez, and I really didn't get their music until much, much later when I started studying about music and things like that. But Schnittke's music was it was a little odd. It was modern and old at the same time, and that really intrigued me. It's one of the things that really drew me to classical music in the first place, because it's you're hearing when you hear say a Beethoven symphony, you're hearing modern people give their modern take on this very old piece of music. So it exists in the present, but it's from the past. So there's almost like this continuity, between the past and the present with it, and that sort of speaks to me. Schnittke's music does something similar. It kind of, except in reverse. It's modern, but it looks back to the past a lot, and so it's hard to explain. You really need to hear it. The Sonata for Violin and Piano. At the time, I played the piano too, and I really took to this piece. I especially like the third movement with the just crashing, but very sonorous piano chords, followed by a really quiet chord as the violin plays a melody over it. And it has this the third movement has this really beautiful ending with the piano playing in the very highest register and the violin playing this really sweet melody on its harmonics. It's a really striking piece. It moved me the first time I heard it, and this recording of it moved me too, especially the third movement. I'm talking about the Sonata for Violin and Piano. All right, so when I see Schnittke's music, I just kind of want to relive that time. It really felt like a big discovery for me back in the 80s, and this is probably these are probably the two best recordings of these two pieces that I've ever heard. So I'm really happy to have heard this. The other works on this album there's a polka and a tango, and they're pretty straightforward. The Sonata for Violin and Piano is probably the heaviest piece. Well, it's followed by a madrigal in memoriam of Oleg Kagan, violinist, and I think, right? And this is, I think, for solo violin, and it's very, very slow and moving. There's a lot of counterpoint in it. Notice the title, Madrigal. Again, something from the past. And then the mood lightens with this congratulatory rondo, which I guess, which is really cheerful, and then it ends with a really quirky arrangement
of Silent Night.
Silent Night, yeah, which I rather enjoyed. I thought it was really clever. I liked it. I don't know about clever, but it was kind of compelling. Anyway, any thoughts on this, Russ? What do you think?
This was something new for me because I didn't know this composer at all, and so for the first several pieces, as you said, he's playing things from the past with slightly modern types of interpretations, maybe some harmonies and different things. But I quite enjoyed it, very melodic. And then when I got to the sonata, I thought, whoa, now we've hit something different. And so at that point, I decided, okay, now it's time to do a little research on this composer. And apparently he had been, experimenting with serialism in these sort of pattern structures of modern
the things that I was really
12
struggling to really
and things like that, which I don't usually enjoy too much. So the first two movements of the sonata were kind of a struggle for me. They didn't have much that appeals to what I like, but I was interested that you just mentioned about the third movement, because the third movement is equally as modern. However, he has found some very beautiful things to accentuate in that movement, and that one really drew me in. And so I thought that was quite interesting. I'm not sure about the Silent Night myself, because if you're going to deconstruct...
It kind of made me laugh, really. I liked it.
It's sort of like, to me, it was sort of like taking a beautiful cabinet with veneer and just ripping it off. To do that with a melody that everyone knows, I guess it's sort of maybe why he did it.
I guess it put me in mind of there was in the 80s there was an Art of Noise video where I think it's the band or just destroying like a piano throughout the video. They're kind of taking axes into it and just taking it apart. And I think this kind of reminded me of that video.
This is something maybe I'd like to listen to sort of in January when I'm completely burnt out of all Christmas sort of music and I want to see it just ripped apart. And then maybe I could appreciate it intellectually a little bit more. But it's interesting. He seems to have almost a split personality in his composing style, and so I'd be open to listening to some more works from his compositions.
Yeah, for me, he was really the connection for me between the music I was kind of, the classics I was getting to know, Mozart and all that, and contemporary music. He was like the link that kind of helped me to get into composers like, Boulez and the really very intellectual composers of the post-war period, Boulez and who did I mention? Stockhausen, who I'm still not really a big fan of, but it takes a lot of work to listen to those.
This is an interesting contrast in styles, and then that's what drew me in to understand what his approach was, and how he had developed his style. So
yeah,
it's worth a listen.
at the end of his life in the 80s, he was living in Hamburg in Germany. And I always wonder how he got there, because the Soviets were still, the KGB hated him, apparently. Anybody who had anything original to say was pretty much frowned on in the Soviet Union by the government, not necessarily by the people. And but a lot of those voices got out and wound up kind of doing something rather unique. And they still do to this day. The old Soviet satellite countries like Estonia really are among the best, making some of the best music, the best composed music in the world right now, as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, I'm always interested to hear what they have to say. Okay. All right. So recommended. Well, these are all recommended. Okay, the last one, this is a pretty much self-recommending album, but I really wanted to talk about it, is Hilary Hahn, the American violinist Hilary Hahn's new album called Paris, or Paris, if you happen to be French. All right, this is an album. The reason it's called Paris, and there are actually several connections, is that it sort of documents her, I guess, lifetime of work with the Orchestre Philharmonique de Radio France. I hope I said that right.
I read
Conducted
that.
By the Finnish
also, these
composer
works
Mikko
all
Franck.
had their premiere in Paris.
Yes, that too, or they were kind of commissioned there, and there's only one French composer on the album, Ernest Chausson, his poem for violin and orchestra, which actually has a Russian sort of connection. I think it's after, it's kind of the narrative of it, the musical narrative is after a Russian short story, and if I could find my notes here, I can tell you what it is. I think it's by Taruskin, if I am correct. I don't know. Oh, no, it's Turgenev. Sorry. What am I saying? Who's Taruskin? I don't even know who he is. Turgenev, short story, The Song of Triumphant Love, which I've never read. Yeah, it's his cousin. Turgenev. Everybody's related. All right. And, again, this is a work I had heard before. In fact, just last year, the French soprano Véronique Gens did like, oh no, that was a different piece. That was also Chausson. Sorry. Okay, let me back up and get out of that. This particular performance, though, really stood out for me. One of the things I noticed about Hilary Hahn's playing is it's very prepared. Okay, this is not a violinist that leaves things to chance. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, of course. It's just a really beautiful performance. And the thing that came out to me about this particular performance of the Chausson poem is that it's very... It sort of has the timing that she uses, like the pauses, the way she, stops playing and then starts again. It's all very well timed, almost like the way like a comedian will time their jokes to make you laugh. She's kind of really timing her entrances and exits and pauses for the greatest dramatic effect. And it really impressed me a lot. I was noticing that about this performance just the first time I was hearing it. It stood out from other ones I had heard in the past, which are all very, they're very good, but this one's is pretty special. After that, she does Sergei Prokofiev's first violin concerto, and this is a pretty wild piece. And Hilary Hahn is really one of the best violinists out there, and you really hear that in this piece. It's very fast. It's kind of wild. She's got this big tone when she needs it, and then there are just times where she's doing these amazing runs, and the tone like stays consistent.
I know this piece. I have several recordings of it, but I don't. Yeah. I rarely listen to them. I've listened to most of them once. She makes everything she plays sound just beautiful. I had never realized how lovely the Prokofiev could sound.
Yeah.
Until I heard this recording. It's actually
a pretty brutal piece in points, and she brings that out too. But there are just certain runs that she does at these really quiet tempos that are just, but the tone just stays consistent. It's really amazing. I'm just interested in anything she plays, really. All right, now the centerpiece of this album is Enohani Rautavaara. This is another composer who died recently. He died in 2016.
Because these were written for her, weren't they?
They were being written for her, yes.
Right.
Now, it's a little bit of a convoluted story. She wanted a violin concerto from Rautavaara, and she actually hadn't. I think she hadn't met him at this point, but Mikko Franck knew him, being they're both in the Finnish kind of music world. And Franck talked to Rautavaara about it, and Rautavaara convinced Franck to do like a multi-movement serenade instead of a violin concerto. For some reason, he didn't want to do another violin concerto. He was already pretty sick at the time, and I guess he got to work on him, and he eventually died, and they figured that he had never gotten around to doing it, so they just lost their work. But when I guess his estate or whatever were going through his papers, they found this two-movement work. It was called Deux Serenades, which means two serenades. That was the title at the time. I guess he would have changed the title if he had written more. And the first serenade was complete. It's called Serenade pour mon amour, and this one's also based on a text. Maybe that's the one I was thinking of before by Turgenev. I'm not sure. And the second one was written out, and it was orchestrated about halfway, and then that was it. The rest, there wasn't even a sketch. The rest was just the piano part, like of how the rest of the work would go. So they got one of his students, Clavier, to finish the. He was a great composer himself. He's a little younger than Rautavaara. To finish the orchestration, and which he did, and then we have these performances of these two very lovely works. Very much in Rautavaara's style. They're both pretty. Well, the first one is really kind of slow and melting and kind of romantic, and then the second one has like a lighter orchestration to it. It's sort of it's kind of a nice send-off. These are really the last works that Rautavaara ever wrote, and it was nice for me to hear it. I'm actually a big fan of his music. I'll recommend a few to you. If you're unfamiliar with Rautavaara, the best place to start is with a piece called Cantus Arcticus, which features recorded bird sounds with the orchestra, and it's just really beautiful. It kind of sounds like this awful 20th century, concept piece, but it's not. It actually is very surprisingly beautiful and memorable. Give that a listen. That's not on this recording. That's just a good entrance into his work. These pieces, I think they're lovely. I mean, you'll like them when you hear them, but if you've never heard Rautavaara's music, they're kind of feel like a culmination of his later period when he was doing slower, more meditative music. Other good works to listen to are the 7th and 8th symphonies, both really, really gorgeous works. And so these are world premieres, and there you go.
Yeah, I like this recording. I think these are actually a good place to start with Rautavaara, because if you start with his symphonies, they're big and
it's true,
expansive. Yeah. And for me, that's what I started with, and I was sort of lost in the fog with them for a little while.
You had to hear the Cantus Arcticus first. That was my introduction to his music.
But actually. Here, these are accessible in this program, and just for me, when I listen to individual classical instruments, just based on the sound, but probably my favorite string instrument is cello. Maybe a lot of people are like that, and sometimes, depending on the artist or the program, violin can get a little bit on my edge from the tonality of it or the way of playing, that I can listen to one work, but I don't want to listen to a whole program. But Hahn's playing is just so beautiful. I think she could play anything, and it would just sound, completely polished on all passages, regardless of the tempos or the emotions conveyed. So I listened to this right from start to the end and enjoyed all of it. And I think her reputation is well deserved. And these pieces are very interesting. And although there's a lot of variety here, her sort of approach and musicianship just ties them all in together. So, it's a great recording of violin works, and a good entrance into Rautavaara, I think, as well.
I guess so. I think the Rautavaara, though, I wonder, but I'm familiar with a lot of his other music, I wonder how much these two pieces would stick, like the first time you hear them. are you going to go away thinking about them? That was the case with me with Cantus Arcticus. The first time I heard it, I was like, wow, that was really, really something. It was really kind of unique. All right. So anyway, that's my recommendation. I think he reuses a lot of sort of melodies and things like that. Like he'll like stick in like sort of things you've heard in other works, not entire sections or anything, but just little fragments of melody, and they kind of recall they have the other work if you've heard it. And there's a bit of that in these. I recognize certain fragments of melody from other works in it. So that kind of it gets into a more intellectual end. If you don't know the other works, I guess hearing them is great, but then when you hear the other works, then you can start putting the puzzle together. It's sort of nice. All right, so highly recommended this one too. Okay, so those are my 3 recommendations for the week, everybody. We have some jazz coming up now.
That's right.
From Russ. Yeah.
It's jazz time.
Okay.
And I dove a little bit deeper this week after having to review the industry and critics' picks in especially classical music, but also jazz too, and do a lot of that listening we had to do to get through all those nominations. I wanted to look and see what was new out there in jazz because I hadn't looked at anything in a few weeks. So I've found some tasty cuts for everyone, and
tasty
I hope you
cuts.
enjoy these. Yes. So first up is the John Patitucci Trio. And John Patitucci is a big name. You may have associated him with Chick Corea. Back when I was a youngster in high school, I went to see the Chick Corea Electric Band. I had second row seats, and I looked up and there was John Patitucci and Chick Corea. I believe Dave Weckl was on drums. And then a huge South African guy named John Smythe sat down in front of me and turned around and talked to me for most of the show. But John Patitucci has a huge resume in jazz, playing with a lot of famous musicians. And this trio intrigued me because the pianist is Bill Cunliffe, a pianist who I met back in the 90s a few times at a performance and then jazz clinic. And he's a Grammy Award winner himself in the arranging category, and he's done work with, among others, Frank Sinatra, Joe Henderson, Freddie Hubbard. And Patitucci, other than Chick Corea, has worked with Wayne Shorter. And the drummer here is Vinnie Colaiuta, who is sort of a drummer's drummer. Drummers really like his work. He's very versatile in jazz. He's played with Herbie Hancock and also Chick Corea with Patitucci on one live album. I believe that was the live from Blue Note Tokyo back in the late 90s. And he's also done some pop work with Frank Zappa and Joni Mitchell and Sting. So he's a very versatile drummer. And here, with Bill Cunliffe, they recorded this album as sort of a not planned out project. I believe they had just a day or so to record. And so they did all the tunes from memory, other than the one Chick Corea tune called The One Step that they had to sort of write out to get through. But everything else were tunes that they were familiar with so that they could sit down in a short time. And Cunliffe commented that they didn't have any sheets to work from, so they were just looking at each other and communicating while they played, which to me has always been one of the joys of piano trios, because you just have 3 players. You can really focus on the communication. As we mentioned with the
Chick Corea
album, that to me, that was the big joy of that album, to listen to the interplay between them, like Bill Evans' trio recordings. So that's what I'm always looking for. And that element is really here. This is a nice recording. And the material that they cover, we've got some interesting pieces. There are some sort of jazz standards. There's Laura, the tune, but we've got Conception by George Shearing. We've got the Korea, the One Step, as I mentioned. Miles Davis's Seven Steps to Heaven.
Yeah, and we've got George Shearing. Really, I don't think that was nice. A nice little surprise.
Yeah,
I thought.
And we've got the Thelonious Monk tune, We See. So nice material and really good interplay, and a good chance to hear Bill Cunliffe, who's an excellent player, inspired by these other two great musicians. And so this is on Coq Records. And I think you mentioned that it's not available on CD.
Yeah, not on any physical format. It's download only. But yeah, you never know. They might come up. It's
it could come out.
Label.
It's a new recording.
It might come out. Yeah.
This is one that could easily just go under the radar, though. But these are all monster players and a very nice performance. And so I'm searching through sort of things that don't show up as new releases. This is a new release.
It's not going under our radar, and now it's on your radar, listeners. Give it a listen. You'll love it.
Yeah. Did you like this one, Mike?
I did a lot. I liked your picks a lot this week. The thing about this one and the others too, there's a real joy to them all. And in this one again, like with the Chick Corea, the trilogy too, the interaction was really the thing I was listening to. But I also enjoyed the piano playing a lot on this one. And this is there was I don't know how to explain it. There was a lot of space, and it was just really well thought out, just chords and playing and things like that.
He's a really great player. He's
really
not flashy, but I
Mm.
think you can tell that he's an arranger in the way that he builds his chords.
There you go. That's what I wanted to say.
Yeah.
I was looking for that. Yeah, I enjoyed this a lot. Again, kind of chased all those storm clouds away, made my day sunny.
Yes.
Yeah. All right.
Patitucci's an awesome bass player. So anything he does on acoustic or electric, it's worth listening to.
Anyway, Lecoq, if you're listening out there, put this out on CD. I want it.
Michael, buy it. If you
I have
press
CDs.
it, and he will buy it. So
I have lots of CDs. My house is threatening to sink into the earth's crust under the weight of the CDs.
And I've asked a couple times for when you write out that will, just put the music collection in my name. So
I need someone 20 years younger than you to include in my
that's true.
CD
I do have
will,
a nephew. I don't know what kind of music.
Yeah, but those people, the younger people, they don't want physical media. They want they want to just stream everything.
I'm going to live as long as possible. Hopefully my ears will hold out. Anyway, my second pick, I'm going to relate to another piece of news that came out because as a general rule, we've decided that we want to generally stick to new releases of music because there's so much that's we could talk about that we've explored in the past or talked about together, but then we would just go on forever and ever. We're going on long enough as it is each time. However, there are things that have sort of fallen through the musical cracks that do resurface or come out, and they're worth talking about. So one news item that we saw this week was that the inventor of the cassette tape, Lou Ottens, a Dutchman, I believe, has passed away at the age of 94. And not only did he invent the cassette tape, but he was instrumental in the development of the CD, although he is rather humble about all that. And maybe some of our older listeners could think back to the cassettes.
I remember.
Yeah. Well, the power of the cassette was it gave the ability to record music to the everyday person. Of course, reel-to-reel had been around, but reel-to-reel was sort of the audio geek's mechanism because it was huge and, those giant spools of tape to put on there. But when you got
I distinctly remember making cassette tapes of my favorite songs for my girlfriends. I used to do that back in the day.
Mixtape. You could dub the albums. I dubbed the albums I borrowed from the library. And they were all great until they got a little sticky and stuck to the heads in your player, and you had a real spaghetti mess of magnetic tape in there.
And I think about that was another big issue, trying to unspool all that the tape that got around the spindle and the wheel that kind of moved it.
Yeah, so anyway, this got me thinking, and so, cassettes had come out, and for a while they were coexisting with albums. And then when CD players came out, go ahead.
Yeah, but between the the album and the CD. There was cassettes, and then there was the Sony Walkman. That was the first really personal stereo that was ever made, and it was a really exciting thing at the time. You had this really fantastic sound going directly into your ears.
Your own music with
device,
you.
It was amazing. It was amazing. That later became the the Sony Discman, and now we have these MP3 players we carry around, or whatever we do now with our phones.
Yeah, But what got me thinking was, so this transition of cassette, and then I believe CDs were commercially available in 1981, but not every piece of music was available on CD when it came out, just like not everything comes to streaming now for a variety of reasons.
Yeah, also CD wasn't really affordable until around 1985 or so.
Right. I didn't get my...
They started mass producing them in 1985.
Being a po' boy, I didn't get my first CD player till I was 19, and that would be 1989. So you figure out how old I am.
I was around 85. I was in college at the time.
Right. So I was still into vinyl at that time, and I did have a cassette player.
I remember the first CD I ever bought was REM's third album, Fables of the Reconstruction.
Ooh.
Yeah. And I loved it.
What I've noticed as we are going through this sort of transition to all digital and streaming, and although both Mike and I are still collectors of physical medium,
and will be for life.
And will be.
At least I will.
Most of your buying has to be online now because the stores that sell new CDs have almost nothing in stock. I was at Tower Records and the other place in town that sells new CDs, and I was after
Tower
that I
Records,
went,
by the way, which is still in business in Japan.
Yes,
it's a different thing because I know they folded in the U.S., but you can still go to Tower Records if you come out to Japan.
And then I hit my two favorite used shops, and what struck me right away was that the used shops have twice as much selection as the new stores do now. And when I go to the used stores, I'm always looking for little gems that are out of print and not available. And I find lots of, especially jazz, which is what I mainly collect, that is on CD, that is not available even if you wanted to buy it new, and you won't find it on streaming. So I have hundreds of CDs like that. But this week I found something that I never knew about and that I would like to introduce, which is an album from 1982, which should have made it onto the CD medium, but never did because it was only released on vinyl and then it went out of print and was forgotten about. And I think there's a lot of works out there that are sort of like that were on a medium that either the record company is defunct or was never reissued. And then is sort of lost to time. But one of my favorite trumpet players, the great Bobby Shew, made a recording back in 1982 called Play Song. This is the Bobby Shew Sextet, and now it's available for the first time on CD and on streaming on Fresh Sound Records. And on this recording, you have the great Bobby Shew. And if you're not familiar with Bobby Shew, he's a trumpet player. He was one of the few trumpet players who would also be known for playing lead trumpet, the loud, high sounds in a big band, who could also play amazing solos. And his resume is impressive. Woody Herman, Buddy Rich Big Band. He was a veteran of the Las Vegas show scene, LA studios, Toshiko Akiyoshi, Lou Tabakin Big Band, Louis Bellson, and is a trumpet player who can just play anything. And this album I didn't even know about because I had no way to ever listen to it. As an interesting fact, the adult music theme that you hear at the beginning and end of this podcast is played in part, well, the trumpet part is played on my Bobby Shew Yamaha trumpet model, which I bought for jazz playing as a unique lead pipe that he designed with his collaboration with Yamaha. This particular recording is very nice. It's got a variety of songs on it, played with some other Los Angeles-based players from the early 1980s. There's Gordon Brisker on tenor sax, keyboardist Bill Mays, drummer Dick Burke, percussionist David Levine, and there's 5 originals, and also Clifford Brown's La Rue, which is played beautifully, and also the bassist Bob Magnuson. Bob Magnuson is a wonderful bass player. There's so many recordings I have with him on that I don't know. And when I listen and I say, what is that deep, woody tone? And when I look who is the bass player, it's Bob Magnuson. Impressive resume, all sorts of jazz recordings, even pop recordings. Even he's recorded on a Madonna album. He was just a real monster of the bass. So this has some really tight arrangements and beautiful solos from Bobby Shew. Did you check this one out, Mike? Did you like this one?
I did. The thing that jumped out about me, I'm going to talk about Bobby Shew's sound in just a moment because that really struck me. But the first thing that struck me about this recording was the Fender Rhodes piano. It's a sound you just don't hear anymore.
You don't hear it all.
And it really dates... well, I don't want to say it doesn't date the recording, but it makes you aware of when the recording was made. Let's say I would have said late 70s. I was thinking, I know you're telling me it's 1982. I actually didn't do the research. But I was kind of enjoying hearing that sound again. I remember that from a lot of pop songs in the era, but you can tell it wasn't from our times. You just don't hear that sound anymore. If they were going to use like a doctored keyboard sound, there'd probably be a synthesizer of some sort.
Although I should say that some people have been bringing it back on purpose to sort of evoke the Miles Davis recordings of that era.
Right.
But I think it's to create that atmosphere when the Rhodes was dominant in there.
I think Whitney Houston had it on a lot of her songs. I seem to recall, back in the day. All right, and then there was Bobby Shew's sound. I was really paying special attention to this. He plays with a mute a lot, I noticed. But when he plays out, he gets that sort of like golden brassy sound that I was thinking of. That last week, 2 weeks ago, when we were talking about Ambrosak and Musire, it's kind of like this dark kind of non sort of a sound that really doesn't ring. It's kind of it's a sort of black hole of a sound or something like that. And Bobby Shew is the opposite of that. He's got that just sunny, brassy sound that you really think of when you hear the trumpet, and just to hear it's always a real pleasure. It kind of reminds me of Christmas a lot. I don't know, I associate brass with Christmas for some reason. Yeah.
So you know where my models come from trumpet playing.
Great chops. Yeah, just fantastic. Yeah.
And so since I'm breaking the rule with new recordings a bit, the new old recording, if you're not familiar with Bobby Shew, I would just like to point out, and I'll put these in the notes, of 2 other awesome recordings, one of which, the first I'll mention, had disappeared with lack of availability but became available again. And that's a recording called Playing with Fire. It's on Mama Records. It comes from 1986. And this is the Bobby Shew recording with the great trumpeter Tom Harrell. And it also has, I don't have the notes, but the pianist is Kei Akagi, Japanese pianist. This is one of the best trumpet albums I've ever heard. Two trumpet players. There's the Freddie Hubbard and Woody Shaw recordings in the 80s. I think this one is just the interplay between the two. I remember reading in the notes that when they were in the studio after the recording listening to the playback, they couldn't remember who had played which lines because they were so in tune with each other that they're like, did you play that? I don't know. Was that you? The melding of minds is great on this one. This was on Mama Records, but you can find it on streaming. Spotify doesn't have it, but it's on Apple. So I'll put the link for that. It's a great album that sort of slips through the cracks. And the other one...
Deezer? Is it on Deezer?
It is on Deezer. You will find it on Deezer. If any other people are using Deezer, I like Deezer. You like Deezer so far, Mike?
Deezer. I what? Yeah,
do you like Deezer so far?
I do.
Yeah, good classical and jazz selection on there. And the other one,
disappointed.
Since I'm on the Bobby Shew theme here, one that everyone should hear if you like Latin jazz is Salsa Caliente.
I like this one a lot.
This is from 1998, also on Mama Records. You might say that Bobby Shew, he doesn't sound like someone who might play Latin jazz, but he's from Albuquerque, New Mexico, and his first pro experiences were with Latin bands, so he's well versed in the Latin idiom, and he can play anything, and he surrounds himself with some great Latin players here. We've got trombone, Art Velasco, Giusto Almiero on tenor and flute, and we've got some great percussion. This is a fabulous album. It just sounds like it could have been recorded yesterday. It's fresh. If you've got a Pancho Sanchez high from the Grammy list, Salsa Caliente by Bobby Shew.
This is great.
A good one. It's a great album. Yeah.
Yeah. Just also just hearing that that virtuosic trumpet playing too over those Latin beats, it was just fantastic too. So it really felt like something new to me.
Yeah, it's very fresh. Yeah, Bobby Shew.
Check that out.
Player.
Before we move on, I want to kind of, this memory popped up for me. You were talking about how this album somehow didn't make it to CD back in the day. I seem to recall that when CDs were first being released, they weren't really. They were kind of considered to be an audiophile form when they first came out, because there was no surface noise on them, so it was all classical music. And they just kind of, in the 80s, they were just considered to be sort of unworthy to have like popular music put on them. But the market eventually kind of took over, and then by I'd say 84, 85, popular albums like rock albums started to be like mass produced. I remember there's this big thing about how they couldn't get the rights to the Beatles. Those records didn't come out on CD until like much later than everything else.
Yeah.
But I remember they started putting all the Led Zeppelin and Rolling Stones albums on CD. That was like a big deal. And that happened in the 80s. So there was this 3-year gap where they weren't putting anything but classical music on CD.
And then you had the unfortunate, when they realized that they were going to be able to sell things on this new medium, they just transferred these
this is another
recordings
issue.
with no considering of the mastering and the new medium. So you had these horribly, treble heavy transfers that sounded terrible. And that turned off a lot of the serious audiophiles to the medium, because it was supposed to be perfect sound forever. But some of the transfers were so brittle and treble heavy that, they were unlistenable almost.
Yeah, exactly. See, these days, when you get remastered CDs of, like, say, rock classics, they generally sound really great now, because over the years, they've figured out how to kind of master records to the medium. It's got to be different than on an LP, on a vinyl record, to make it sound good. You can't just have the same.
You don't have that natural roll-off of the high end there. Right. So. That's right.
Okay. More on that some other day.
Some other day. Not too much audiophile geekery here, although we enjoy it. It's not our focus.
Although we've got enough music geekery.
Yes. All right. And my final selection, and the one I'm really happy to introduce to you, because it's just a joyful listen, is this.
Oh, yes, it is.
This recording by two great baritone sax players. And there's never enough bari sax, right?
I feel the same way.
So
it's just an instrument you just don't hear enough of.
No, you don't. In the history of jazz, it's sort of in the appendix, right? Of course, you have Jerry Mulligan as the very smooth melodic player, and you have the Pepper Adams, who on a lot of great recordings, and with Thad Jones giving the more edgy version, and other great players also from upstate New York, the great Nick Brignola, who's no longer with us, and there are other great players too, but we never really think of the baritone as the front and center. But here on this album called Tough Baritones, which is sort of a play on the album way back around 1960, Tough Tenors, we've got the fabulous Ronnie Kuber along with Gary Smulyan, two of the leading baritone sax players, and we've got them both on this album together. And Smulyan is about 65 years old, and Ronnie Kuber will be 80 years old on Christmas this year. But he
doesn't sound it. Sounds like
certainly doesn't sound
breath.
it. Yeah. These guys are both awesome. Kuber has a little bit of the edgy tone a la Pepper Adams. He's a very creative soloist, adventurous, lots of energy with impeccable rhythm. Over the years, he's recorded with tons of players, and also made a number of Latin jazz recordings. And this album is just a lot of fun. The interplay these guys have is just full on with lots of energy. We've got 10 cuts on this album, and three of the cuts here are Horace Silver tunes. We've got Nika's Dream, Split Kick, and The Preacher. So they've got that really funky post-bop thing going on, and the energy is great. In the standard sort of jazz songbook, we've got Richard Rodgers' Lover. We've got a really nice version of Freddie Hubbard's Little Sunflower. And we've also got a cover of Thelonious Monk's Well, You Needn't. And so we've got a mix of real swinging jazz. There's a couple of blues numbers in here too. And it's just a raucous baritone party. And it sounds great.
Boy, does it swing. Yeah, if you're
really
looking for swing and jazz, it's here.
Yeah, and these guys push it. It's post-bop, pushing into more modern sort of outside playing, always swinging with lots of energy, and it's really, really fun album. It's on, let's see, Steeplechase Records, but it's available on all the streaming platforms. And I had known Ronnie Kuber's name as appearing on various albums, but I hadn't really listened to any of his solo releases. When I heard this, I was really hooked, so I started looking in his collections over the years, and I went back to his debut. It's 1976, Cuba Libre, and he was already a massive player in the mid-70s, and that's an awesome album too that's reissued as a digital remaster, covering lots of standard Star Eyes and other things. So he's a guy who's always been sort of out there playing great stuff, and also in ensembles, because Barry usually gets buried in the ensemble as the low sound of the saxophone, and he's played with his resume is huge over the years, but he hasn't lost any of his touch at 80 years old. So everyone should check out this album, and you can never have too much Barry sax in the repertoire there. So
yeah, and you can never be too happy either. And this album is guaranteed to lift your spirits right away. It certainly did it to me. It was not that I was down when I started it.
Yeah. So those are our selections for this week,
and I loved every one of them.
Yeah, some good classical, some good jazz.
This is only the second episode we've done like this, really, because we got sidetracked by the Grammys.
Yeah, we jumped on the Grammy train, which, I don't know. I think that's got to
figure out how to do that next year. I think we should still do it, but maybe in a different way. Unless they wake up and find some more interesting stuff to look at. Yeah, they're the least interesting of the awards, I think. I don't know. I like year-end lists. They're usually pretty good. I usually dig up something interesting that I missed during the year on those. So
yeah, I've got lots of. I'm not going to say any names or records, but there's some things that are coming out this spring that I'm really looking forward to talking about and sharing.
Too. Yeah. I've already got a backlog of classical things to listen to, but then I was looking at the jazz list, and there were a few things I wanted to hear there too. Yeah,
should we let one slip that is really good? The Charles Lloyd.
Oh, Charles Lloyd, yeah.
Yeah, that new one. I haven't heard it yet. Good. Oh,
it just came out.
That one, yeah.
You heard it already, huh?
Yeah, I'm not going to talk about it. And there's one more that I'm not even going to say the name, but that's going to be coming up because it's coming out in April. I've heard one track from it, and it's going to be awesome by a great player.
We're going to turn the mics off, and you got to tell me what it is because I got to get going on it. We'll talk about it on the show soon, as soon as we hear it. Okay. I'm a big Charles Lloyd fan, by the way, so I'm already liking it.
Yeah, you're going to like that one, and we'll review. Yeah, maybe we'll do that one in the next episode.
Yeah, thanks for joining us again, everybody. It really,
thanks for joining
really
us for episode 5. Again, if you are listening and you've made it to the end of our broadcast of this podcast, please do leave us a comment and let us know where you are and what you enjoyed, what kind of music you're into, so we can get to know our audience a little bit better. And next time, we'll avoid the awards and the opinions of others and the critical and commercial influences on the music, and we'll just choose to talk about what we think is really happening out there in the classical, jazz, and maybe some other genre.
In fact, we're in the clear until around September when the classical Grammophon Awards come out in Britain. So
it's a long time.
We got months and months
a lot
of just
ground
our
to
stuff.
cover with whatever grabs our ear. So until then, this has been the podcast for music for the mature mind. So keep listening, and we'll see you next time.